Hello guys, this is Giannitsa Street. Welcome to my podcast of the series The Road Has Its Own Story. In this project, I will have another approach, and I will ask for the assistance of a friend of mine, actually a couple, that will discuss about the story of the street that we are referring to, Giannitsa Street in Thessaloniki. So, with no further ado, I hand over to them. The floor is yours, guys.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really fascinating and honestly quite surprising journey into what you might call fractured geography. We're doing a deep dive into a name Giannitsa. And this name refers not just to a major millennia-old historical Macedonian city, but also to a sprawling kind of high-tension urban street in nearby Thessaloniki.
That's exactly it. That's the core of our mission today. Tracing the identity of one of Macedonia's most important regions across centuries, from its ancient capital roots and its role as a crucial Ottoman religious center, right through to being a modern crossroads defined by, war trauma and very current urban challenges. So we're synthesizing sources that cover the long, dramatic history of Giannitsa City, its role in modern conflicts, and then sort of contrasting that with a contemporary look at the gritty, developing Thessaloniki street that shares its name, Giannitsa Street.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should probably start with the historical Giannitsa, the city. It's the largest in the Pella region.
That's right. And geographically, it's really strategically placed. Sits near Pico Mountain, the Axios River. And historically, it's practically in the shadow of ancient Pella, the original Macedonian capital.
Right, and it's old. Really old.
Oh, incredibly old. What's truly fascinating here is realizing just how long people have lived there. Our sources confirm continuous human habitation right there since the ancient Neolithic period. We're talking like late 7th to early 6th millennium BC.
Wow.
Yeah, the Neolithic settlement at the Old Agora, it's remarkably one of the oldest known settlements like it in Europe.
So a lineage going back nearly 8,000 years. That's something.
Precisely. And just for context, the ancient region itself was called Vatiaia. Then, during the Byzantine era, around the 11th century, the settlement was known locally as Vardarian.
Okay.
But its most defining identity, the one that gives us the modern name, really came during the Ottoman period.
And that name, Giannitsa, is linked to the Ottoman military leader Gazi Ahmed Evrenos.
Yes. The prevailing historical theory is that Evrenos captured the area around the 1380s. He then renamed the settlement that was already there Yenisi Vardar, which translates basically to New Vardar.
Okay, and this is where we get that really surprising historical detail. Giannitsa became known as the Mecca of the Balkans. I mean, that's an extraordinary title for a city so far north in the Ottoman Empire. How did it earn that?
Well, that title really tells you a lot about its strategic and spiritual importance back then. Evrenos himself was buried there in a major mausoleum in 1417. And because he was such a significant figure, both militarily and religiously, the city just became this site of mass pilgrimage for Ottomans across the Balkans, even Anatolia. It really cemented it as this key spiritual and administrative center.
Wait, so this city was effectively the most important Ottoman religious site in Europe. How did that affect, the Christians living there, given it had been a continuous Christian settlement for ages before?
Yeah, that's the real tension point. While the city flourished as this Mecca of the Balkans, life for the local Orthodox Christians, especially during the peak of Ottoman power, say the 16th, 17th centuries, was, incredibly restrictive. We actually have records, like a 1559 firman that's an imperial decree detailing the limits on Christian building.
What kind of limits are we talking about?
They were pretty specific, clearly designed to impose a sort of second-class status. Christian houses couldn't be taller than 5.75 meters, and they were explicitly forbidden from being painted red. Maybe the most striking thing, though, no Christian churches were allowed inside the city limits until 1858.
1858, that late?
Yeah, only after the Tanzimat reforms kicked in. Those were the mid-19th century efforts to modernize the empire. That's when the first Orthodox church, Koimisis Theotokou, was finally built within the city proper.
That paints a really grim picture. Second-class citizenship, lack of religious freedom. It must have directly fueled the tensions that exploded later during the Macedonian struggle.
Absolutely. And that brings us right to the conflicts of the early 20th century. Giannitsa's geography just made it a crucible for war. First, during the Macedonian struggle, that's roughly 1904 to 1908.
And the sources show the landscape itself, the natural environment, became the actual battleground, didn't it?
Exactly. The nearby Giannitsa Lake and swamp, known locally just as the Valtos, was the ultimate strategic prize. It became the main theater of conflict, hosting this brutal guerrilla warfare between Greek and Bulgarian insurgent groups. Control the swamp, you control the vital access roads.
And this wasn't just fought by outside forces, right? It demanded huge sacrifices from the locals. The sources mention specific people who paid the ultimate price for their activism. Who were some of the key figures in the committees of political defense there?
Yeah, the names really speak to how dangerous that time was. Figures like Antonios Kassapis and Papadimitrios Oikonomou, they were deeply involved in pro-Greek activities, and they were targeted, assassinated by Bulgarian forces for it. This whole period, the intense local suffering and heroism, it was later immortalized in Penelope Delta's classic novel, Secrets of the Swamp. That book really underlines the emotional weight of that conflict for Greece.
So this leads us to the big showdown, the point where that strategic location determined the fate of the whole region. How did the pivotal Battle of Giannitsa play out in 1912?
The Battle of Giannitsa fought October 19th and 20th, 1912. It was massive, a critical fight during the First Balkan War. It was basically the last organized Ottoman stand before Thessaloniki. You're talking 25,000 Ottoman troops dug in on the hills around the city, facing 5 Greek divisions.
Sounds like a really heavy fight.
It was fierce, heavy casualties on both sides, and the city itself suffered a major fire during the battle. But the outcome was a decisive Greek victory, and its strategic importance was just immense. Securing Giannitsa cleared the path. There's this quote from a staff officer, Manuel Raktivan, he later wrote, "October 20th, Giannitsa, it is the day we took Thessaloniki." Captures it perfectly.
Wow. One line summarizing the entire campaign and the pressure. And right after that victory, the city went through this radical transformation, didn't it? Both geographically and demographically.
Transformation really is the key word here. First, the lake was systematically drained. That turned the swampy battlefield into incredibly fertile farmland. Second, and maybe even more defining for the modern city, was the compulsory population exchange of 1923.
That demographic shift was almost total, wasn't it?
It was fundamental, a complete reshaping. Nearly all the remaining Muslims were deported, and Greek refugees, people driven out of places like Smyrna, Cilicia, Pontus, Eastern Thrace, were settled there instead. This huge influx of Greeks from Asia Minor really gave the modern city its distinct character and its focus on industrial agriculture, fruits, cotton, tobacco, which continues today.
But the city's tragic history still wasn't over. We have to mention the dark shadow of World War II and the German occupation, starting April 41.
Yeah, this period led to a truly horrific event that's often overlooked. The massacre of Giannitsa on September 14th, 1944. Just weeks before the final liberation, the Germans, with SS involvement, executed 112, maybe more residents, including the mayor, Thomas Magriotis. It was a brutal reprisal against partisan resistance.
And the physical destruction.
Devastating. The city was 1/3 destroyed by arson. A Red Cross envoy visited shortly after. Their statement just captures the trauma. Giannitsa is already a dead city. It's a powerful, terrible final chapter to the city's long history of war and sacrifice.
That history is incredibly heavy. And when you compare that long, dramatic story of the city's transformation, well, it makes the shared name with the modern street even more jarring. Let's shift now, just a short hop away, to Thessaloniki's Giannitsa Street.
Right. The street presents this stark, almost conflicting modern picture. It's an area today that really feels like a city next to the city. It lies strategically between the busy Monasterius Street and the new western entrance highway to Athens. And it's a place defined simultaneously by rapid development and, frankly, infrastructure failure.
Yeah, the sources point to a lot of economic tension there.
Yeah.
Big construction and real estate companies are very interested because the land costs are still relatively low. Agricultural land estimated at, $300,000 to $350,000 per strima. That's about a quarter of an acre.
Exactly. That lower cost makes it kind of ripe for speculation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the older businesses that used to define the area, like the main KTEL intercity bus station, various transport companies, they're suffering or moving out, maybe to Kolochori, and that's leaving behind a sort of urban vacuum.
But the signs of urban decay and neglect are everywhere, right? Suggesting a lack of basic city investment. What does that actually look like on the ground?
It's pretty stark. Locals report major, repeated flooding, like half a meter of water covering the street when it rains heavily because there's just no adequate drainage.
Yeah.
On top of that, the police officially consider Giannitsa Street one of the most sensitive areas in Thessaloniki due to high rates of organized crime, drug trafficking, prostitution.
So while the land seen as this potential gold mine for developers, the actual residents are struggling with basic safety and infrastructure. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see the architectural heritage getting neglected in all this.
It really is. There's a perfect visual symbol of the whole dilemma, the abandoned, listed old mill of Giannitsa. This mill used to thrive, using the rail and sea trade that flowed through this gateway area, but now it's derelict. Full of broken glass, reports of stolen car parts. It really symbolizes that abandonment of industrial history in the rush for quick real estate profits.
You've painted a picture there of serious social cost attached to this speculative boom. Looking ahead, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Or is this development just going to steamroll ahead without fixing the root problems?
Well, the outlook is actually seen as extremely high potential, at least according to real estate analysis. Experts are talking about super values within the next 5 years, specifically driven by promised infrastructure upgrades. The new KTL station, the new Western Road entrance, commercial centers like Citygate, all this is expected to drive apartment prices way up. They're currently around $1,600 to $1,800 per square meter. That should eventually pull the area out of its current slump. The big question, though, is whether the social and infrastructural cleanup can actually keep pace with the real estate development.
That's such a powerful contrast. The historical city, defined by sacrifice, community rebuilding, and the modern street, defined by struggle and speculative boom. What really links these two different places, beyond just the name Giannitsa, it feels like the common thread is this constant demand for extraordinary collective action and sacrifice.
That is the ultimate synthesis, I think. We can actually bridge the two stories with a lesser-known but totally vital military action that happened back in 1912, right after the victory at Giannitsa City.
That would be the desperate race to cross the Axios River.
Precisely. After winning at Giannitsa, the Greek army faced a huge problem. The retreating Turks destroyed every single crossing over the Axios River, which was swollen with autumn rains. We're talking the main wooden road bridge, 2 railway bridges, all gone. The Greek army absolutely had to cross immediately to stop the advancing Bulgarians from grabbing Thessaloniki first. The fate of the whole campaign, the whole region, basically hung right there on that riverbank.
And this is where we get that story of just astonishing local resolve, the incredible Epic of Chalastra, on October 22, 1912.
Yes. Faced with this totally impassable river, the people in the nearby village of Chalastra stepped up with an unimaginable act of collective self-sacrifice. Our sources detail how they literally dismantled their own homes.
Their own house?
Yeah. Tore out doors, windows, fences, furniture, anything wooden, basically, to provide the raw materials for a makeshift bridge. They even donated their most valuable possessions, their fishing boats, to help build it.
Sacrificing their own shelter, their property, immediately, just so the army could cross. How long did it take?
Just 48 hours. That act of collective, immediate sacrifice allowed the Greek army to get across and reach Thessaloniki first, securing its liberation. It just perfectly synthesizes the history of this whole area. The region around Giannitsa has historically demanded the absolute maximum from its residents, whether that meant resisting invaders, rebuilding a city shattered by war, or, like in Chalastra, literally tearing down your own roof for the greater strategic good.
That's a really remarkable connection between past actions and present challenges. So we've traced Giannitsa from a Neolithic settlement to a sacred Ottoman center, a bloody war zone, and finally into these two very different modern identities, the resilient rebuilt Macedonian city and the struggling yet developing urban street in Thessaloniki.
Right. And what this deep dive ultimately shows us, I think, is that the history of this region is just defined by relentless, often really painful transformation. The ancient city was transformed by population exchange, by war trauma, and the modern street, it's transforming now because of powerful economic forces, speculative real estate pressure, forcing it out of its current state of, well, neglect and lawlessness.
So as you listen to this history, maybe consider this. Think about the residents of Chalastra tearing down their own houses for a temporary bridge during wartime. Then think about the residents of Giannitsa Street in Thessaloniki today, struggling for basic infrastructure, for safety, amidst this massive real estate boom. In which era was the community's immediate sacrifice more profound? And in which era is the long-term investment in indignity, in stability, the more challenging, sustained act of faith? Something to think about as you continue your own journey of discovery.
Thank you guys, that was a real great deep dive. So, for all of you that you have just listened to this podcast, I hope that you liked it. If you want some more, you can subscribe, and you can hear some more. So, whenever you are in Thessaloniki, walk in the Giannitsa Street and see how the modern is always connected to the past. Have a nice day from Thessaloniki. Yannis Stefanidis, over and out.